So today I want to take a look at the review for your final exam. And here's the deal, guys. The answer key is posted on Canvas. There is no way I am going through this entire thing. But I just sort of want to point out the most common mistakes or things that students need to review, as well as talk about some of the things that you might want to gather and put together on a separate sheet of paper in your notebook. Okay, so maybe if you can find one page at the very back of your notebook or the very front of your notebook, and maybe just make it like your final exam review sort of cheat sheet. Okay, and this will sort of, oops, I can't spell. And this will sort of be your quick reference sheet, so you don't have to dig through your entire notebook if you want to find some of the topics that I know are most likely for students to reference. So, starting at the beginning of your review packet. First question right off the bat, my students always are trying to solve these, like numbers 1 through 3, when all it's asking you to do is simplify. So for example, if we look at number 2, right, we're just distributing. So that will give us a 10x minus 20. Then we have a plus an x minus 9. And then from there, we just want to combine like terms. Again, we're just simplifying. So a 10x and an x gives us 11x. A negative 20 minus 9 gives us minus 29. Okay, and so our final answer on this one would just be, our final simplified answer would just be 11x minus 29. So make sure when there's no equal sign, you're just simplifying. Okay, then going further down, right, we have some basic things with solving equations. I want to take a look at just reminders of what we do with variables when they're on opposite sides of the equal sign. So if we look at, for example, number 7. Okay, if we distribute, we'll get a negative 2x minus 2 equals a 3x minus 12. These variables are on opposite sides of the equal sign. And when variables are on the opposite side of the equal sign, we want to get them together with the opposite sign. Okay, so regardless of whichever one you decide to move, I'm going to move the negative 2x. We need to change the sign. So the opposite of a negative 2 will be a positive 2x. So we'd have negative 2 is a 5x minus 12, and we would continue solving from there. Okay, number 9. Here's another common one that we struggled with. When we have this large fraction bar, remember this is where we want to move the denominator first. So on this one, we want to multiply by the 7 first. So we'll get a negative 3x plus 4 equals a negative 14. And then we can subtract the 4. As opposed to like number 5, right, where we want to subtract the 5 first and then deal with the fraction. Okay, number 10. Again, if you want to see the full answer worked out, check the answer key and check the math from there. Number 10, when we're undoing multiplication with division in an inequality, if we multiply or divide by a negative, we want to flip the inequality sign. So we'd have w is less than or equal to negative 3. Okay, maybe you want our rules for graphing inequalities. So this might be something that is worth you writing down on your separate sheet of paper. So our rules with graphing inequalities. So if we want to do something like graph x is greater than 4 and we're just graphing on a number line, and it will be very clear on the final exam, especially since it's multiple choice, right? If we have greater than or less than, we are going to use the open circle. If we have less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, it'll be the solid circle. Okay, greater than or equal to, we shade right. Ooh, those together. And then less than or equal to, we shade left. And all of these, remember, only work if the variable is first. Now you might say, okay, great, but what about when I do the dashed or solid line? Well, that's our rule when we're graphing on the coordinate plane. Okay, so if we're graphing on the coordinate plane, if it's greater than or less than, that's our dashed line. Our greater than or equal to or less than or equal to is our solid line. Greater than or equal to, we shade above. less than or equal to, we shade below. Compound inequalities is another common one that students forget because we haven't done those in a while. So if we look at number 13, this is a compound and. When we don't see the word and, it's an and. If we see the word or, it's an or. If we see the word and, it's an and. If we don't see a word at all, it's an and. Remember when we solve these, we kind of ignore up until that first inequality sign. And whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. But we would also do that to the third side over here. And so that would give us -4 is less than 2x, which is less than 12. And then we just repeat that process, right? So the next thing we would do is undo multiplying by 2 by dividing by 2, but again, all 3 places. And so that would take us here. Okay, you'll have some solving for y. We've done a ton of solving for y, so hopefully we are okay with that. There's a few key terms with our basic word problems, so like number 17 and 18, things like is at most and is at least that we might want to make sure we're okay with. So if we have something like is at most versus is at least, is at most, remember it's kind of backwards. Is at most is less than or equal to. So our other one that's kind of common in here is no more than. Those are our less than or equal to's. Our is at least or is no less than. That's a greater than or equal to. The other ones are pretty straightforward, right? Less than, more than, less than or equal to. Okay, remember the x value can't repeat. That's what makes something a function. So pretty straightforward going through there. Then we get into writing equations of lines. So usually not as large of a deal with y equals mx plus b, but maybe some info, right? So to find the slope and y-intercept, we need to be in y equals mx plus b form. So like number 31, you would need to solve for y. The slope formula, I hope you know at this point, but if that's a formula you want to write down on your sheet, you could. X and y intercepts, right? That's where we're going to cover up and divide. Right, we're really plugging in 0 and solving them both. 36, so this is when we're getting into graphing linear equations, and we have something like x equals or y equals. So here are some things with slope and linear equations we might want to be reminded of. If we are finding slope and we get something like 0 over 4, 0 on top is our 0 slope or no slope. Okay, if it's the reverse and we get 0 on bottom, that is our undefined slope. Okay, if we have an x equals line, an x equals line is a vertical line, right? It goes this direction. Where a y equals line is a horizontal line. A horizontal line or a y equals line is always the one that has no slope or 0 slope. A vertical line is always the one that has the undefined slope. So that might be a piece you want to add there. We get into writing equations of lines. So remember, when we're writing equations of lines, we're plugging into point slope form. So point slope form we've used so many times, you may or may not need to write that down. But remember, our point slope form is our y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. Where, right, these kind of always end up being the opposite of what they look like when we pull them out. We get into, let's see, some info with parallel and perpendicular lines. So you might want to make a note of something like parallel lines have same slope. Perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slope. We get into solving some systems, which is what we've been practicing. So a common question number 42 that comes up in here, actually 41 as well, right? These are written horizontally, but you can just write that second equation underneath and then just add these and solve by elimination. I sent an email with this, but we're going to make this line A, line B, line C, line D. They're not labeled well. So with line number 42, the ordered pair 1.3 comma 2.5. So if I find the ordered pair 1.3 comma 2.5, right, I'm looking for that intersection, and the two lines that intersect there are line C and line A. Okay, so we would have that. Make sure on 46, when you're graphing here, I guess we kind of made this note but didn't add it up here, right? When we're graphing on the coordinate plane and we shade above or below or all that stuff, these have to be solved for y. Make sure we have that. Our last piece that we have is our frequency tables, and some of us have just still struggled with this going through. I think the biggest piece as a reminder is that we're looking for the words of, and then whatever is are, is, picked, preferred, chose, whatever. Okay, so what percent of those under 30 prefer? So those under 30 are going to be on the bottom of our fraction when we're calculating a percent. So of those under 30, so I'm looking at all of those under 30, which is right here. So we would have to add those all up. Okay, we get 109. Then we're going to look after the word prefer Instagram the most. So in this column, who prefers Instagram? Well, where do we overlap? Right here at 51. So we're going to take 51 divided by 109. Our instructions tell us to round to the nearest tenth. So write 0.46788. Multiply that times 100 gives us 0.46.788. But if we want the nearest tenths, 46.8%, right? Because the number after it is 5 or larger, so we are rounding up. Okay, make sure you finish your entire review packet. You obviously can add any other things that you might want to add to your individual notes. Feel free to fill in as much as you want. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. Take advantage of my office hours on Friday. Anything that you need that I can help you with after that, just reach out and let me know.